Alright, welcome back to Game 10 of Lucid's 2022 tournament, where we are playing Phlegra. It is turn 11. If all goes to plan, we will clear our cap circle by turn 12, just barely, because everything has been going to plan in this game so far. Speaking of going to plan, here's the horde of barbarians that we've been worrying about and testing various things against. Definitely did not test this, so fingers crossed that these little heavily armored hobbits are the right choice for barbarians, which, yeah, they do have the high defense, so in that sense they stack up well. Protection, not great defense, though, against barbarians, but we are bringing a lot of stuff, so yeah, the militia obviously evaporates. That was part of the plan. We're getting a decent number of kills here. Losing some guys. Hopefully we don't lose too many of our Mouflon, because obviously they're the ones that are going to stick around. We'll want to use them for whatever our wars are, and yeah, that didn't look too bad. I'm sure we took some casualties, but overall, maybe committed too much stuff, but we do have another kind of nasty province to go after, so yeah, we only lose one of our armored hobbits, or excuse me, Hoburg, and then of course the militia are gone, but that's fine. The Helit archers we kind of want to ditch sooner rather than later. And we do have some retreats, right, of course, the militia. So yeah, that one went pretty well. This, I think, is our pretender. Yeah, going up against the wolves, the dogs, the dire wolves, and the wolves, which it should be fine, right? They have low length weapons, and so they should be relatively easily repelled. I don't think these direwolves do much damage. Okay, maybe a little more damage than I would have hoped, but it's not piercing, right? And we have stone skin now, we have some armor, we have protection 23, so we're looking at chip damage with 56 hit points, regeneration, all kinds of cool stuff. We're regenerating because we're must be moving to a province that has higher dominion, and then of course the wolves, and probably also, yeah, the dire wolves have pretty low magic resistance, so they're going to get petrified relatively easily, and yeah, there you go. Our pretender can take out some dogs. No great feat. We're glad to see that there was no terror there. It was a confident victory. We'll probably move on to try to take the that Jaguar tribe, although we may chat with Raga first, because bumping with their sacreds probably would be terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, yeah, this one, I was really hoping, probably, I don't know, hard to say. Maybe should have split the militia out just to, take arrow fire, crossbow fire rather, but we didn't. So we have an oversized Mouflon expansion group, 12 of these guys, and yeah, it's really just a question of casualties, although, morale is always a concern with Phlegra, so it looks like maybe 1 or 2 losses, but yeah, we probably again used too much. Although again, it doesn't take that many losses, yeah, so we do lose 1 Mouflon, and if we could probably have taken this with 8, but I don't know, we used 12. So there you go, triple expand, except one of those is a province we'd already expanded into. Some diseases spreading. We can expect to see more of this. Honestly, this is pretty low. Phlegra has some extra national events that kill a lot more population than that. But hey, tax collection went well. We like that. And I'll catch you guys after the jump. Alright, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Only 1 expansion next turn, but we will at least, well, if it succeeds, clear our cap circle by turn 12. We will still have 2 independent provinces that we need to deal with. Actually, wait, no, I lied. We'll have 2 expansions. I think we're just going to go for it here with our pretender. Definitely no worries with the Jaguar tribe. The sling stones and the clubs, they just don't do that much damage. There's not that many of them. So really the only risk is that we bump with Raga. Is this really worth it? I don't know. It's not going to be worth it from a gold standpoint, but gems are nice, and you're going to get more gems out of a swamp, and nature mages are relevant for us. We're going to be able to cover some of our nature problems, at least with 1 army with our pretender, but otherwise, no native nature. So being able to pop out a few nature mages, even just nature 1s, will be useful. So we'll see. I might try to get in touch with Raga before this turn rolls, and if they really make noises about wanting this province, well, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, pretty good confidence here. I mean, we'll see. We don't actually know how many heavy cavalry are here, but considering we just took out all these barbarians, and those mercenaries seem pretty effective. We have a lot of Mouflon. We have some fellows that will hopefully catch lances for us. They might even be able to deal with some of the crossbowmen if we're lucky. So fingers crossed on that one. Sadly, this group is a little too slow to take this province, so we're just moving into our fort, and then we'll take it next turn. In terms of recruitment, we're just going to recruit a couple Mouflon here to link up with this expansion group that will just roll into an army at some point. And then we are recruiting Helot crossbowmen, not that many. Holding off on the Cyclopses, more and more I'm thinking that Xibalba is probably going to be our first target. I do need to talk with Raga, but they had offered a non-aggression pact, and I'll probably take them up on that. So that'll leave us with, well, technically we border Kalem now because they expanded into here, but this is a pretty small border. I mean, they are birds, so they can fly, and depending on who grabs this throne, I guess right now it's just me and I imagine Kalem, although you never know, maybe somebody else. Raga could certainly be here. So this throne will open up, a wider border, but there is an Earth Mother here, or sorry, a Great Mother, along with Earth gnomes don't matter. Those aren't gnomes. So yeah, mostly the Great Mother, so that might slow people down. Otherwise, though, yeah, this is kind of an easy throne, so it'll probably open up sooner rather than later. We may also want to think about thrones rather than a first war. That is another way to fix magic diversity problems, and yeah, what are the thrones? Alright, so here are our thrones, all level 2 thrones. There definitely are some useful ones in here for us, so we don't actually know which thrones are which yet. But this one down here is particularly looking somewhat weak, although there's no mages listed here, which is almost assuredly a lie. So there could be a nasty surprise here, but pale ones aren't very good, and heavy infantry, there's only 60 of them. Whether or not we could hold it is another question. We haven't really talked with Ulm yet, so yeah, I'm not sure where that's going to go. But again, in terms of our first war, right, we have a non-aggression pact with Mictlan. Things seem relatively peaceful with Raga, and ideally we'll have a non-aggression pact with them as well shortly. So that'll leave us mostly secure on our borders, other than weird diagonals that are much less likely to erupt into a war, though you never know. And then it'll leave us with two possible targets, Atlantis and Xibalba. Both of them relatively strong nations in the late age, my limited understanding, although again Xibalba really I think in all ages has a tougher time earlier on, and then once they really start to ramp up into blood, that's when they get really scary. So that's a reason to attack Xibalba earlier rather than later. I know that Midgard had made some noises, not about attacking Xibalba, but just pointing out that, they're a blood power that can ramp up, so if we could get rid of them, that would be nice. They're also pretty worried about Mictlan. And then in terms of Atlantis, again, I don't know a ton about the nation, but I do know that they have access to Wailing Winds, which, yeah, will be very effective against us. So that's maybe an argument to go against Atlantis earlier rather than later. But I'm not sure we're going to be able to finish Atlantis off. We don't actually know yet, but I mean, they're in this lake, right? They're one of the nations that can get underwater relatively easily, and they like to get underwater. They can build forts underwater. So all this to say that until we have a way to dig them out of the underwater, even if we win this war, which that's a big if, we won't be able to finish it, right? They'll be able to raid us for some time. So, once we get tyrants online, once we get some super combatants, then we'll at least have better options for going underwater. Not great options, but, something. Also, since, our research, where's our research at? We're about to hit Conjuration 3. It is moving at a decent clip. Was actually moving better. We are moving some mages out to do some site searching. I don't know about site searching with these guys. It will get you your gems faster, but they only search at level 1. At least they're spread across 3 paths, so in that sense they're decent site searchers. But yeah, searching with our, slow to recruit cap onlys, our Archons, that's definitely preferred. But, you know, it's starting to get a little later, and since our other Archon died in the retreat, right, our site searching is more or less halted, and so we are going to get our next Archon out, you know, this coming turn, but I'm figuring it's going to take them a while to search everywhere, so yeah, kind of doing a mix, like searching at a lower level in some other places, losing out on some research, but our research is still progressing relatively quickly, and we're aiming, you know, at fire elementals. And that's another reason that, like, Atlantis, since they like cold, I'm sure they've taken at least some cold dominion. Our fire elementals are not going to do as well, whereas Xibalba doesn't look like they've taken full heat or anything like that. We do see some snow on the ground, although that might just be because their dominion, you know, hasn't moved in enough. But yeah, Xibalba does not like the cold, so there's a good chance that they've taken at least some heat scales, which is going to make our fire elementals more effective. And we know that there's no fire resist on their bless, though their sacreds do have that built-in fire resistance. So really sort of a combination of factors, like we'll see. I'm still not 100% decided on it, but you know, it's like we need to have an early war, I feel. You know, we're not very big. We're not going to get more powerful later in the game, right? We don't have a really powerful late game. I think we'll probably be strongest in the mid game, you know, once we have a good amount of research unlocked and we can use our communions and there aren't a bunch of strategic nuke spells that can just wipe out our communions before we even bring them to battle. Combined with the fact that starting at turn 30, probably by like turn 35-ish, we'll be able to recruit the tyrants. So, you know, anywhere from like turn 30, maybe out to turn 50, that's probably when we're going to be strongest, I feel, because our communions will be, you know, at the zenith of their power, and we'll also have the tyrants available to us. But again, you know, we could maybe wait, you know, for that, but I'm not really feeling big enough to just sit. And again, like, sure, that's when we're going to be most powerful, but I'm feeling, you know, around turn 50, like, it's going to drop pretty fast in terms of, you know, our strength. I also, again, feel like there's a decent chance if we attack Xibalba, you know, Midgard might also, they are Midgard in this age, right? Yes, they are. So Midgard might choose to come in, you know, if we launch the attack, and like our research is going to line up, and I think we'll stack up okay against the bats troop-wise. So kind of for all those reasons, that's what we're thinking. Do see a lot of scouts coming out of Atlantis's territory, but I mean, we're recruiting a ton of scouts. I imagine everyone's recruiting a ton of scouts. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to attack us, although Atlantis is really the only person that we got a favorable border with. So, you know, they don't actually look massive. Like, we don't know how far to the south they extend, but I mean, considering... Yeah, so Raga is right here, so this is Raga's cap circle. So, I mean, unless they're already fighting Raga, we know that they don't have this. It's a pretty good chance they don't have this. So in a lot of ways, Atlantis isn't massive either. Of course, they are going to get the underwater, most likely uncontested. But still, Atlantis is not massive, and, you know, they might be thinking like, hey, we didn't get a favorable border up here, you know, Phlegra not that strong. Certainly they have not reached out for a non-aggression pact, nor have I. So yeah, we may have to fight Atlantis even if we don't want to. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 11. Alright, welcome back to Game 10 of Lucid's 2022 tournament, where we were playing Phlegra. This is turn 12, and this is being recorded from the future. I will, of course, endeavor not to spoil anything, and we are finishing out expansion technically. It is turn 12, so theoretically, the last set of independents that we should be cleaning some off with our Pretender. There are just Jaguar tribe here. We probably negotiated for this province, so not too worried about a bump. And this should go really well. The slings are pretty low damage, like the clubs aren't good at breaking through armor. You know, fantastic armor. We do at least have, you know, decent protection. Our attack skill should help. And then, of course, you know, we have petrification aura. Not sure how somebody got vined. Oh, that must be the mage in the back helping out his friends by tangling them up. And then, yeah, of course, we have the fear aura. So, you know, Gorgon definitely can expand. Of course, this is turn 12. You know, we have given her gear. We've focused our research on her. So, yeah, it has not had a good showing, I would say, for the Gorgon, though probably at least somewhat my fault, coupled with the fact that it's the late age. She really doesn't like crossbows. So I just wanted to double check. But we are indeed getting at least some repels here. Yeah, I would say a significant number of repels. Now, I mean, granted, these are pretty awful troops, but, you know, still, it's nice to see that, like, we can at least do some repelling. That's probably not something I looked at, you know, quite close enough when we were playing. Just sort of assumed that it was working, but always good to verify these things. So that one works out for us without too much difficulty. Definitely glad to be picking up another province. You know, we've talked about how we don't have any native nature, and we can get... you know, nature ones from that province, though it's not a great province. Oh, right, this province. This is just one of those ones. I mean, this is so much heavy cavalry, and I mean, we knew going in, right? So we have these elite warriors, and then we have our archers out in front to just soak up the lances. We're going to lose most of those archers, but that's okay. You know, we've talked about how they're not really that fantastic, and then, you know, we have the mercenaries, you know, hopefully getting chewed up, and then our own troops, the Mouflon, that we actually care about, showing up afterwards. So, yeah, overall, this looks like it went pretty well. We have our prophet, you know, nuking some people, and there are some crossbows here, though not too many crossbows, not an insignificant number of crossbows. Luckily, it looks like they've focused in on the mercenaries, though probably the next volley will hit our Mouflon. Yeah, some of them went for the Mouflon, though lots of misses. Definitely glad to see that. Now that we're in melee, I think it's fine. So yeah, that one went pretty well. We do sadly manage to lose the mercenary commander, which is unfortunate because, you know, I mean, he only had 4 losses, but if you lose the commander, you lose the company. So that's definitely some money down the drain for us. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they did help us take... we mostly wanted them for this province, so not the end of the world. But not exactly ideal. For our own casualties, we do lose 20 of the archers, but we only lose 1 Mouflon cataphract, you know, take out 19 heavy cavalry. Also find a Staff of Flame Focus. Not actually a bad thing for us to be finding. We are a fire nation. Some unexpected events. I imagine one of these is a barbarian attack. Okay, yeah, containing the plague. Yeah, sounds like misfortune scales. Hey, we get some extra dominion. That's always nice. And then, yeah, huge barbarian horde. Ooh, this is a bad one because we lose not a ton of population. I mean, that's a lot of population, but I've seen much worse, you know, negative numbers. But, you know, it's bad enough to have barbarians attacking when they, you know, pillage the province badly enough to wipe out a bunch of population. That's even worse. Let's see if we have anticipated this attack. We actually have some province defense here. This looks like maybe a 10 or maybe a 15. So it's not impossible that we win this. But as you can see, not likely. Yeah, so we do indeed lose a province, and I think that was, yeah, a farmland province, so that definitely hurts. Misfortune 3, not a free scale, as commonly stated. Well, okay, usually misfortune, not a free scale. Not a ton of proponents of Misfortune 3, though. They are out there. But we do finish a construction on one of our fortifications, so definitely very happy the barbarians didn't choose to attack there, though we probably have a lot more province defense there. Probably. And I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Yes, as you can see, expansion is completely over. We definitely have not failed. So we do have 2 independent provinces that we haven't taken. I'm assuming, I know that we've negotiated with Xibalba for this one, and we are just using a pretty normal Mouflon group to take that. We probably have negotiated for this as well, though I do not recall. But we are, you know, risking our pretender there. So probably negotiated. Also very high confidence about that. This province actually looks decent. This forest, you know, 60 income. I don't know. I come from early age. In late age, this is a lot less impressive. But in early age, this is actually a pretty nice province. Still, in any age, 60 gold is 60 gold. So happy to be picking that up. This swamp, though, you know, not fantastic. So by and large, we mostly have, you know, the income that we're going to get from the independents, other than, you know, the barbarians who have sniped away, like I said, a very valuable province. So that's not great. We are probably bringing, yeah, some crossbowmen down. 20 crossbowmen. Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. But, you know, we do want to react to this as quickly as possible. We are starting another palisade right next to our capital. Don't love this. You know, this is 43 resources, and it's in our cap circle. But, you know, we do have a lot of connections now. One of them is a forest. There's actually only, like, what, 1 province that we own that doesn't actually border someone else, which is not great. So pretty much wherever we put the fort is going to be a border fort. This, at least, you know, is fairly sequestered in our territory. It only has 1 border with an enemy, you know, versus like putting it out here, you know, or even down here, kind of on the edges or corners of our territory. So, yeah, like I said, I don't love having this fort here, but, hey, we're protecting some gems, and we're kind of limited in our options. Definitely glad to be getting another fort up. That is important. I do think Phlegra is a nation that probably wants, a good number of forts. Recruitment-wise, we are recruiting, a couple of Cyclops Smiths. Maybe over-recruit these. Hard to say. Haven't played Phlegra enough, but, yeah, if I was going to redo this, maybe we wouldn't recruit quite as many. Really do have a tendency to just split their paths and not be that useful in combat, but they are nice, they are a nice chassis. And then recruiting crossbows for our troops, pretty much the same in our fort that nope, that's the capital. Here we are, yeah, pretty much the same in our fort. You can see that, this fort, the resources are a big problem, and, maybe should have just put it in this forest. Now, of course, we don't own that forest yet. This fort already exists. A fort that exists is way better than some hypothetical, fort that couldn't have possibly existed. But in a void, I definitely think Phlegra would prefer to have a fort in a place like this. I've definitely focused on it's got some high resource connections, but when you really, really need a lot of resources, I'm starting to think that you kind of need to put the fort in a place, in a province that itself generates a lot of resources and ideally connects to many other provinces that generate a lot of resources. But really neither of these things are true for this fort. It'll get better once we take this forest. But in its current position, you can see it's pretty pathetic, the troop output that it's creating for us. Particularly for bows. Bows really do want numbers, and again, this is just part of the problem of the Helic crossbowmen being so heavily armored. But we're still going for it. We are recruiting a oppressor and then switching over, it looks like, to shackled mages. We do want to be careful about, blowing out our upkeep. And we definitely will want shackled mages for our communions later. We are starting to get some scouting information, not a ton necessarily, but we at least have decent eyes on really the majority of our neighbors. So, that's a good thing. It doesn't really look like any of our neighbors have, failed at expansion outright. Mictlan is looking, at a pretty healthy size. We see Ulm down here, though we don't really know a whole lot about them. I mean, we don't know a ton about Mictlan, or really anybody yet, but we can see that Mictlan is at least, somewhat sizable. Raga is smaller than I was expecting, though we don't, they may extend pretty far out. We don't know, how they look for their border with Kalem. Speaking of Kalem, we, just barely, we do technically border them, but it's not much of a border. Yeah, we can actually see a Phlegran force here. We do not see any of their sacreds, though, so these are all just scales troops, but, still kind of interesting. Atlantis is probably the nation that we have the most information on, because we did manage to jump a scout on their capital. We do see some of their cap-only mages, which I think can make pretty decent thugs, and then quite a few Ice Guard, which are dangerous. Along with their sacreds, so definitely interested. We might have seen their bless. I don't recall it being super strong, but they are just a solid chassis to begin with. It also looks like Atlantis has done a pretty good job of getting underwater. I imagine they probably have these other underwater provinces as well. So Atlantis is looking at decently healthy size, though also not massive or anything like that. Nobody really looks massive. Everybody looks like they've roughly expanded within their little grid. Xibalba also looking, somewhat healthy, though our information on them is kind of spotty. Yeah, we're trying to get a scout up there. We see a little bit of Midgard, but we don't really know much about them at all. And then we do see Utgard here. So, starting to get more information about the world at large, but definitely not ready to pull the trigger on any wars yet. And I think that more or less covers turn 12, but since it is the end of year 0, I would like to take a tour of the F keys. Should be relatively brief, as not a whole lot has happened yet, but if we take a look at F1, our nation overview, we finished expansion with 11 provinces, which is under the minimum that you need, supposedly, to be viable. Now, we should pick up 2 provinces this coming turn, so, roughly at the end of expansion will be 13 provinces, which is not good, but not, completely awful. But when you consider that we took an Awake Expander, this is kind of a disaster. So, of course, we're a long way from being out, but definitely wasn't feeling great at this point. You can see that we've only managed to do a very little bit of site searching, but we have managed to find a few sites, so we'll talk more about gem income later. On to the graphs, which, aren't too interesting, though. You don't always see a dip during expansion. So, you know, even like flat lines like this, not great for expansion. You want to see things going up. This is like 1 province a turn, and then this is probably like a 2 or maybe a 3 here. But yeah, you can see that, you know, our expansion was a struggle, right? We expanded relatively slowly and then stopped for a little bit, sped up kind of, and then lost ground, and then, you know, did kind of okay at the end. So yeah, not fantastic. Forts, we did at least put a fort up, so, you know, that's nice. Yeah, our income kind of doing similar things to our province graph. Research, we're actually in an okay spot. We'll take a look at our actual research later. Dominion, not too relevant at this point. Army size, actually down. I don't actually know if mercenaries count towards your army size, but that might account for some of it, though we did lose quite a few of those Heelot archers. So that's definitely not great, but, you know, not the end of the world. Obviously, nobody has any ascension points yet. F3 for the Hall of Fame, which isn't too relevant, but it is always kind of fun. There are a number of mercenary leaders up here, which happens a lot for whatever reason. I guess they just get a lot of battles like early in the game before a lot of commanders have them. But we do see like some other, you know, player units up here. There's actually a surprising number of alms units, so it looks like they might have invested somewhat in a bless. Because, yeah, these guys are definitely mixing it up, right? 14 kills, 9 kills, 7 kills. These guys aren't just leading around armies, it would seem. Although the leader here for kills is actually a Zabalban Bat. Probably a prophet, I am thinking. Also of note, Midgard, right, has a few thugs up here, but one of them is dead, which is kind of interesting. And, of course, here are our pretenders of the world. No one has been knocked out yet. Not that surprising, but it can happen. This is where our, you know, actual research is. We're actually doing okay for research. You know, we do have Magic 3, and speed of research was definitely something of consideration to try to bring our pretender online as quickly as possible. So, you know, construction 2 is nice, enchantment 2 is nice, alteration 2 is nice, and, you know, now we're actually going for something fairly dangerous with conjuration 5 once we get those full-size fire elementals. Our research speed is not fantastic, but, you know, we will get there. We'll start to pump more mages out. This is, I feel like we're in a decent spot. There are no global enchantments up yet. And this is our gem income, so 5 fire gems, mostly from our capital, though we have found some external sites. 2 water gems, both of which are coming from sites. 1 earth gem, that is coming from our capital, and then 1 nature gem, which is something that our pretender found for us. We haven't forged any magic items yet that aren't still in the lab. We have given a few out to our pretender, but not too much forging, which I think is fairly normal for the early game. No one has claimed any thrones yet, and that covers the state of things as they started on year 1.